Magic the Gathering is a great game, but sometimes it doesn't travel all that well. So whether you're a button mash hack and slash controller bash, or a meeple moving mastermind of maps, mats, and minis, if you ruffle at the awful riffle shuffle scuffle, or if you're a click clack, pick attack, number ball, luck sack, we're all here for the same reason. I'm Jake, let's talk games. Let's talk Magic the Gathering. Now, I love Magic the Gathering. It's probably my favorite game of all time. But frequently, I find that it's a hard game to travel with. It's difficult to figure out exactly what you need to bring when you're going on vacation with friends or family. Or when you're going to a card shop in which you don't actually know the main format they play. Frequently, when I'm traveling, I like to bring something that my wife and I can play together. Dual decks are great for that, but maybe you find a third person and they don't have a deck, so you play dual decks plus other deck. Or maybe there's a few more people, so you need to bring more decks. But maybe they don't use 60 card decks, so you need to bring EDH. But is it a pre-con EDH? Or is it CEDH, Gitrog Monster, turn 3 combo, destroy everybody? Or maybe they don't even play Magic, so you have to bring other card games, boxes, and sleeves and other stuff. And if people are really into Magic and they want to see what you got, maybe you can bust out something bigger, like a cube. And now you're ready to travel. Load up the car, throw this in a suitcase, and... well, now I feel like I'm a little overpacked. I've tried to account for every circumstance, every situation, and I don't know what I'm going to run into. Well, what I would like to propose today is an alternative. Step away from the formats that people are familiar with. Find something new and interesting. Something different that maybe people haven't played before. And for that, I recommend this. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's not a deck. That's just a random pile of cards. In fact, they don't even have the same sleeves. To which I say, no, this is a random pile of powerful cards. Yes, this is a format that I learned in high school, and I break out every once in a while. It is the best format for traveling, it is the best format for playing people of different skill levels, and it is the best format for getting into a game quick, developing boards like you wouldn't believe, and hitting that late game EDH judge call feel that you just can't really get anywhere else. That's right, this format is called DC-10. At least, that's what we called it. I looked it up. DC-10 is actually a different game, similar, but has some variance on that. Like all casual formats in Magic, it evolves over time. So this is not DC-10. Doing a little digging, there's a similar game called Wizard Tower. But it's not that either. According to the article in 2004 discussing Wizard Tower, it's a format built on buying booster packs and playing with those cards. So that's not it either. Well, maybe it's Judge's Tower. No, that's not right. Maybe it's... anyways, it doesn't matter. It's a casual format. For the sake of having a name for it, I'm going to call it Crab Bucket. And if you're not familiar with what a crab bucket is, it's the concept that if you put a bunch of crabs into a bucket, they won't be able to escape because they will all pull each other down, despite the fact that any one of the crabs working alone could easily climb out of the bucket. So what do? Well, we eliminate all of the other crabs in the crab bucket, and we escape. It's a last man standing format. It's designed to be a free-for-all. And we have infinite mana. And basically no other restrictions on gameplay. The cool thing about that is that it really changes the impact of some of these cards that you wouldn't really use very often. As an example, one of my favorites is Chittering Rats. If you're unfamiliar with the card, you target an opponent when this rat comes into play, and they take a card from their hand and put it on top of their deck. Generally, this means that they just draw that card again on their next turn. But the way this format works, they don't. The next player draws that on their turn. And if you can do Chittering Rats multiple times while you're stacking the top of the deck with cards from your opponent's hand, so different players are going to draw them later. Additionally, other cards like World Gorger Dragon, frequently seen in Legacy and Vintage combos, occasionally in EDH, but it makes the table hate you because you instantly win the game. And that just doesn't feel great. But in a format like this, where you have no lands and infinite mana, a first turn World Gorger Dragon is just a 7/7 flying with trample. Or, played later, the World Gorger Dragon can protect some of your other cards, or exile a Chittering Rats. So you get to wave it in front of somebody and say, go ahead and kill it. I'm going to make you give me a card. It's really cool, the interactions that you can make in a format like this with a random pile of powerful stuff. Now, it can't just be any random pile. That doesn't work. If a player draws Fireball, well, someone else is going down quickly. So you can introduce other rules like X is always 5, or cards that have non-tapping activated abilities can only be used so many times in a turn, or you can only play one card per turn. We're going to get rid of that, and we are going to carefully curate the cards in this deck so that we don't have to worry about those weird little corner cases. We just want big, powerful stuff. And that's not to say that you have to remove every X spell from the deck. One of my favorite X spells to include is actually Sickening Shoal. Right? All creatures get -X/-X until end of turn. Well, you can funnel as much mana into that as you want. So you can either give everything on the table -1,000/-1,000 and just wipe the table, or if you have the biggest creature, you can leave yours alive while removing all of theirs. And once the card is committed, you can't add more mana to it later. So if they buff one of their creatures, well, that also gets to live. There's some interesting interactions that can come out of this. So you have your group of friends seated around the table. How do you actually play Crab Bucket? Well, each player draws a hand of 2 cards. That's right, 2 cards. A lot of variants of this I see have people drawing 5 cards, but restrict them to only 1 card per turn. We don't want to do that. We don't want to add additional rules. So you only start with 2 cards. Now on your turn, when you draw your third, you can choose to play all 3 in the same turn. But then you're left with nothing, and later on, if your opponents find a way of dealing with these, you might be out of gas. Now you're never drawing dead, because there's no lands in the deck, but you could very easily get a card that does next to nothing. And you might be signing your own death warrant by coming out a little too strong. So there's some threat assessment, and some skill in choosing which cards to play or how many to play. Once you draw a card off the top of the deck, that card is yours. All of your graveyards are managed separately. The cards that you own are the cards that you draw off the top of the communal deck. And this deck can change over time. If you're playing through a game and you come across a Phyrexian Colossus, and you say, you know, we've drawn this card a couple of times and it's never been that useful, well, it's your deck. You can do what you want. Remove it. If you think Academy Elite is totally busted because it doesn't tap to use its ability, so you can immediately fire it off and draw a bunch of cards, get rid of it. There's no deck limit. I don't actually know how many cards are here. I think it's in the neighborhood of about 250, but it doesn't matter. Every game, you're going to have 2 plus the number of turns times the number of players, cards drawn. Which means if we're playing at a full table, 8 people, that's going to be 16 cards to start, and then we only have 20 turns, give or take? That's plenty. That is so many turns going around an entire table of 8 people. You're never going to deck out. It doesn't matter. And if you're afraid of decking out, make it bigger. Add more cards. Play 400. Stack your entire cube up minus the lands. It's going to be a little lower powered. You know what one of the worst cards in this entire format is? Deathrite Shaman. That's right. It's garbage. It's hard to get things into the graveyard and you don't need mana. And the fact that it's 1 mana for a 1/2 is irrelevant. It's a 1/2 with abilities that require it to tap to activate. It's terrible. The single worst card in Crab Bucket, top to bottom, including all of the history of Magic the Gathering, is the Black Lotus. It's free, which doesn't matter. It adds mana, which doesn't matter. And other than that, it has no effect. It is a worse welding jar. So that gives you an idea of how to rate power levels in this style of play. Mostly, you can't. It's really weird. It's difficult to evaluate what's good and what's bad, and as long as you're not including cards that really break the game wide open, it's not an issue. So I encourage you to try it out. Take some of your bulk rares, empty your rare binder, sleeve it up in whatever you want, because the color of sleeves doesn't matter. You're all playing from the same pile. And it's a lot of fun. I've never had anybody be disappointed by this, except for maybe some judges that had to unravel some really weird cases that you can get into. Infinite mana gets tricky very fast. So let me know if you give this a shot, or if you know what this is actually called. For now, I'm going to keep calling it Crab Bucket, because I love that as a visualization for how these games go. It is chaotic, it's ridiculous, and in the end, one crab reigns supreme. So get out there, crab some buckets, bucket some crabs, be a crab in a bucket, and have fun while you're doing it. I'm Jake. It's been nice talking to you. I've been Jake. I've been Jake. I will be Jake. I am Jake.